afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to Confuerza Experiences Wisdom Wednesdays, our imperfect space for learners who grow by listening, by visualizing, and by taking intentional action. I am so excited you're here. I started this LinkedIn Live series to have nurturing conversation with social justice leaders to explore how we pursue our passions, create positive impact in our communities, live out our purpose, but also prioritizing and preserving our well-being. Over the past 8 months, these conversations have evolved and really grounded themselves in not only exploring our individual responsibilities, but more importantly, thinking about the systemic responsibilities organizations have to creating environments for leaders to feel valued, supported, and whole. So I hope these conversations can help you to think differently about how we do the work so we can continue to do this work for a long time. I am Manuela Contreras, she, her, ella, and I'll be your host for today. I am the founder and chief inspiration officer of Confuerza Experiences, and as a leadership coach and business strategy consultant, facilitator, and experience creator, I started Confuerza so leaders can exist in harmony with their purpose and preserving their well-being. I'm a Latina woman with caramel skin, brown, curly, wavy hair today with brown eyes. I have these big old dimples that were inherited to me that I hope can shine some light on your day. And today I am wearing a long sleeve shirt because it's a little chilly here in Florida. And I have my tribal scarf that I absolutely love. I will be sipping my sugar cane agua panela today, as I'm also recovering from a bit of a cold. So if you hear me scratching, I apologize in advance, but we are here and present. And I'm sitting in front of a virtual background cream with a eucalyptus branch on my left and the Confuerza logo on my right. So welcome, welcome. All right, as we get settled into this space, I do want to encourage you to look at the comment section below. I added a few reminders so you can get used to and get comfortable in our space today. Please feel free to add your questions and comments there for our wonderful speaker today. And so before we jump into our conversation, I always love to start with a somatic exercise or practice that you can incorporate into your personal rituals or into your team meetings or your spaces as you're building community. For those of you who don't know what somatic exercises are, somatics are really intended to connect to our body, not just our mind and our thoughts, but really connect to our body to help us ground in moments of worry and moments of stress, or just when you need a moment for you. So today we're going to do a very simple and small one because we have a lot to talk about. So if you can all take a moment to just do a grounding breath with me, place your feet firmly on the ground, get comfortable in your chair, or if you're standing up and walking, just maybe take a moment to really feel your steps as you're walking. And I'm going to encourage you to close your eyes, take a deep breath in through your nose, place your hands on your heart, and release the breath out through your mouth. One more time, breathing in through your nose. And as you breathe in and hold your breath, I want you to think of something you are grateful for today. Hold it there in your heart and slowly release out through your mouth. Once again, breathing in through your nose, holding that moment, that thought, that belief, that place of gratitude close to your heart. Allowing yourself to be fully present and remember the light that we do have on this day. And as we slowly release the breath, release your arms, release your body, taking in today, being present, allowing yourself. And if you had a moment of difficulty finding a gratitude, just you being present here today, you wanting to open yourself up to this conversation as these thoughts, I am in gratitude to you for being here. So thank you. Alrighty, y'all. Well, let's get started. I am very excited for our conversation today. I am honored and privileged to welcome Dr. Yanique Redwood into our space today. Dr. Yanique and I first connected with a mutual friend, Brenda Henry. She was the first speaker in our Wisdom Wednesday series, and where Brenda and I, explored building cultures rooted in love. It felt so natural for us to be connected once Brenda and I knew the work that we were doing together. But before we jump in, I wanted to give you a little bit of context as to why this topic was so important for us and why I wanted to invite Dr. Yanique to share a bit about her. As we talk about social justice, racial equity, and cultivating spaces that feel just and where people of color and people from marginalized identities can feel valued, supported, seen, and heard, we cannot move forward with these ideas without acknowledging Black feminists and Black feminism movements that have been instrumental to sparking and shaping several of these social movements, from reproductive justice to Me Too, founded by Tanya Burke, to the concept of intersectionality developed by Black feminist scholar Kembre Crenshaw, to other Black women that have been fundamental, Bell Hooks, Andre Lorde, all that have been fundamental to the critical race theory we see today. And now, for my favorite, as we're evolving into this space, healing justice. Healing justice has been what I find to be the next movement of social justice. And it was also founded and instrumental by queer and trans women of color, particularly Black and brown femme, centering working class, poor, disabled, and Southern and ritual healers. And so, why I wanted to make sure we had space to really specifically talk about supportive cultures for Black women and women of color is because if we are wanting to create and move through these theories, we have to acknowledge the people that have been fundamental to how we got here today. And so I'm really excited to bring in Dr. Yanique Redwood. Her depth of experience, from professional academic to lived experience of fighting for racial and health equity, we could speak on for hours even before this call. We were almost running late because there's so much we can talk about. But I want to be clear, I'm not inviting Dr. Yanique to educate us on injustices or oppressive systems, because there's plenty of resources that are available and will be available for you in our resource library for you to continue to educate yourself and ourselves on how these systems of oppressions are within philanthropy and across all our workplaces in our country. Instead, I really want to invite Dr. Yanique Redwood to talk about her experience just living this more intentional lifestyle and how we can continue to embody building more restorative spaces and experience, not only for Black women and women of color, but also for ourselves as we're healing a lot of this work. Alrighty, well, thank you so much. Hello, Dr. Yanique, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Manuela.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful to have you here. I just want to give you a moment to introduce yourself. Your bio is on LinkedIn, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey and tell us a little bit about what brought you here, what made you feel aligned to saying yes to this conversation, and how has well-being really played a role in your journey.
Sure. So, first, my name is Yanique Redwood. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Black woman with naturally curly 4C black hair. If you know, you know. But it is now dyed auburn, low on the sides, about 2 inches on the top. I have medium brown skin, and I'm wearing clear cat eye glasses, and I'm sitting on the veranda at my home in Montego Bay, Jamaica. So there's a lot of natural light, and behind me it's a cream wall and some, I love these windows, some slatted brown wood windows um, that are throughout the home. And so that's what is in my surroundings. And if you hear my dogs, they are eating lunch. So that's what you might hear. All right. So my journey. So I thought I would start with a little context. I grew up in a very Christian home, and I bought into a lot of ideas about suffering. And one of those was that, well, actually, I resisted this one a lot, that suffering produces like good stuff, right? Like it produces character, it produces perseverance, it produces hope. And I grew up rejecting that. I was like, I want the beauty and no suffering. I don't want the suffering, right? And so I just resisted it. I didn't like Christianity because of, especially because of this kind of one tenet. And then fast forward to 2023, when I published my book, White Women Cry and Call Me Angry, a Black woman's memoir on racism and philanthropy. And I started writing that book in 2018 at the kind of depths of suffering, um, really in pain, for two major reasons. One was the levels of interpersonal racism that I was experiencing while at work. And I don't mean like my particular organization, but in the sector of philanthropy. And then the structural racism that I couldn't seem to, with the resources we had, with the sector and its resources, I just didn't think we were moving anything or changing much of the material conditions that was causing people to suffer in communities. And so I was at the depths of like that suffering, those two, interpersonal and structural. And I wrote this book to talk about that, to just say, I'm in pain. I have been in pain. And so much beauty has come from that book, right? And so all these years I've been rejecting this idea that beauty can come from suffering. Um, and then this book that I independently published has reached so many Black women and so many women of color who have said to me, thank you, you have written my story. I don't feel insane or crazy or out of my mind or, like I was making stuff up, right? Like so many spaces have been created because of this story of suffering. And it has just been, even this space, I'm here with you probably because of this documentation of this suffering. And so that's what has brought me here. It's me saying out loud, it hurt, it hurt. And then other women who have had the similar, very similar experiences of hurt coming together and saying it hurts, right? And holding space for each other and healing together. Um, and that is what has brought me to this beautiful space today. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. What a beautiful way to frame this journey, this evolution we spoke of. I think a lot of times we feel, especially with our roots that we were raised in and the respect we may have for our loved ones that have instilled these values in us, to be willing to want to evolve from that and
Mhm.
accept that, but also say, maybe there's parts of it that
Yep,
I accept,
that's right.
but maybe not all of it.
That's
Or
right.
what I hear you say, which is so beautiful, is you kind of did a full circle and said, huh, maybe there was something there.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
Openness to really explore that. Thank you for that honesty. I think a lot of us may not always be honest with ourselves as, oh,
mhm.
maybe they were right. Maybe we should want to revisit, but to an extent,
Mhm.
always. Um, I think that I did want to hear. I'm so curious for you what it means. What does well-being mean to you? So
Mhm.
many ways
Yeah,
people name it. I'd love to hear what well-being is for you.
yeah, yeah. I really sat with the words well-being, and I believe in them. I believe in these words, and I don't know that the words or the word depending on whether you're hyphenating, is
Mhm.
strong enough. It's a
Mhm.
strong enough word for what, let me just, I was going to say Black women and women of color, but what I needed,
Mhm.
right? That 2018 moment when I was like at the bottom and went to see my therapist, and she, in response to my like lament, she asked me a very simple question. Uh, what is your pleasure practice? Or what
Mhm.
do you do for pleasure? And I didn't have an answer for her. And she encouraged me to begin to find a daily, not a weekly or a monthly or a biannual vacation, but a daily practice of
Mhm.
pleasure. And so I've been studying Audre Lorde's uses of the erotic. I read it so much. This past weekend, I attended a teach-in hosted by Dr. Anu. And every time I read this piece, there's more. There's more from this piece. And Audre Lorde says that the erotic offers a well of replenishing and provocative force to the woman who does not fear its revelation. And so for me, I think the erotic is kind of like this deep, deep satisfaction,
Mhm.
deep pleasure, um, has been more appropriate for me than well-being. So
Mhm.
well-being, it's a useful concept, um, but for me, because of how broken I felt by these systems, by this interpersonal racism, um, I think this kind of deep work that Audre Lorde is talking about, to tap into pleasure, to answer the question every day, what pleases me, right?
Mhm.
Like, what pleases me, or to decide what to do the next step in your career, for example, by answering that question. What feels good,
Mhm.
right? That was, that to me has been, so that's how I would describe well-being,
Mhm.
right? If I'm going to describe well-being, I'm going to describe it in terms of answering the question every day, what satisfies me, what pleases me, what makes me feel good, and moving from that center.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's how I would describe it.
I love it. I love it. What a gift. What a gift to give ourselves to even ask that. I
That's
mean,
right.
I don't take lightly the idea of healing. I know there
Hmm.
are folks that are really thinking about healing equity
Hmm.
because there are so many of us that we have seen personally, I've seen in my family when the idea of healing is like, what is that?
Right.
Work. We got
Right.
forward, and
Right.
I say I don't take it lightly because I understand there is a privilege behind being able to heal and being able to even ask ourselves what feels good. What can I do for myself that feels good and not how do I keep things running? How do I take care
Right.
of my kids? How do I put food on the table? All of that.
Right.
And again, it's not to disvalue any of those experiences.
Hmm.
It's that we hope that we can move forward towards a place that, even if it's a small way that you can find
Exactly.
in your journey, there is that. And the point is that we are all worthy of it, that we
Exactly.
are all worthy of even being able to ask ourselves what feels good today, what can I do that feels good for me today, how can I be satisfied. So that deep satisfaction you're speaking of is so beautiful. And I think what you and I were connecting about this
Hmm.
earlier, but this space of how we move into that and how we have to shift a lot within ourselves from how we were either raised, how we've been conditioned to exist
Hmm.
as women, as Black women, as Latina women, immigrants, as whatever you feel you connect to is your identity. And so a lot of the work that you've shared in your bios and when you're talking to what this shift, this
Yep.
leaving idea and then moving towards the space, you talked about these radical decisions to
Yep.
protect your health and wellness. And I
Hmm.
love that idea.
Yep.
Part of me gets a little mad because I'm like, I hate that it has to be radical because
Right.
you
Right.
have to, but I also love the radical. Oh, I should pull a book that we talked about this. But oh, no, my point is I would love to hear from you. Can you speak to those radical
Yep.
decisions that
Yep.
you made and what led you to make those needing to make radical decisions
Hmm.
towards your
Yeah.
life?
Yeah, I do want to say though that just, Trisha Hershey, in her book, Rest is Resistance, talks about the kind of small ways to rest, right? It's not that you take off, oh, I'm going to go on this 2 week uh, retreat somewhere, overseas, and that's great too if you have the resources or can get access to those resources. But if you cannot, there are ways just in your daily life that you can take a nap when you're tired, right? And that's the same thing that I'm talking about here. It's like when my therapist asked me about my rest practice, and I was trying to tell her about some vacation I was going on or had gone on, she was like, no, 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 no. That's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about in your daily life. What is the thing that you can access that makes you feel good? And one of the things that I often talk about, because it's such a huge deal, is being able to, in a way that I had never been able to before, is to be able to hear leaves rustling as the wind moves through them. These are things I didn't hear before, right? I was too busy and too overworked to hear that. Or one of my favorite things is to look up at the moon. And I don't think all those years of working, I was looking at the moon. I wasn't looking up, right? It was always at this computer screen. It was always at like a spreadsheet, but not being able to like tap into like exactly what's here and the moon pleases me. It's deeply pleasurable to look up at it. So that's what I'm talking about, right? And when I say radical, I think that's radical. I think it's radical to look up at the moon because I bet many of us don't have the bandwidth to even stop long enough to look up at the moon or to listen for the leaves rustling. Um, so I think all of these things are radical. I did do something that would be traditionally radical, which is to I don't I try to spend as much time outside of the U.S. as I possibly can. Um, and so I now, since 2020, spend more of my time in Jamaica, which is where I was born, than I do in the United States. And so if I'm in the United States too long, I just start to feel like I'm not where I'm supposed to be in order to um, center myself, in order to protect myself from uh, kind of the daily grind, the daily acts of racism that I experience in the United States. I just don't experience those here. And so we were talking a little bit earlier. I have a new book out called We Quit America, Our Exit from a Country Designed to Kill Black People, written with my husband, Ronnie Galvin. And in there, we are talking about this decision, this very difficult decision to start to disentangle ourselves from the United States. And I don't just mean geographically. I mean in all the ways that American narratives tell us how to live, tell us what makes a good life. You go to college and then you get a mortgage, right? You get a mortgage and you spend 30 years trying to pay that thing off and paying so much interest in the process. And then you work your whole life. And then by the time you get to 65, you can say, okay, well, maybe I've saved enough to retire. But for Black people and people of color, um, that grind, that racism related stress that we experience our whole lives makes our lives shorter. So that 20 to 30-year retirement that this system was built for is often not available to us. So these ideas about what makes a good life are not for us. They're not for us. And so making some radical, tough decisions to say, okay, for example, I'm not investing in a 401k right now. um, that is that is unheard of. It's like you're not supposed to live a life where you don't put money away for retirement. But we're saying, okay, well, maybe we can live now. Maybe we can live now, and maybe we can live in community, and maybe there are other ways to think about aging. So that's what I mean by radical. They're the small radical, and then there can be some really like major steps that you can take, that I can take to resist what America says is a good life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, no, I love that. I am so excited about your book. So
Thank
everyone
you.
go out and also get We Quit America as well. And I want to name when we're talking about radical this book that I have absolutely loved, The Body Is Not an Apology, The Power
Yes,
of Radical Self-Love.
yes,
Yes, by Sonia Ray, excuse me, yes, Renee
yes.
Taylor, Dios mío, the way she speaks about the need for radical self-love versus just self-love is so important. And so highly recommend, I'm going to link it in the resource library and quote her definition of why it's important for us to be radical in this need, because we do need to go against what has been conditioned for us to believe. And so I love that we spoke to that and that you're speaking to that, because it is so important for us to acknowledge, like, the reason why it does need to feel so intense is because it's so outside of what we're normalized to believe. And what I hear you say that I love as well is that even when we're thinking about retirement, even when we're thinking about vacation, I had the privilege to live in Europe for a summer for an internship, and the entire month of August
Oh
they
yeah,
took vacation, and I was in awe.
oh yeah.
First, that was even a thing, but they had told me, they said, well, Manuela, let's be honest, right? The first week, like, you're really taking time to stop thinking about work, closing things out. Then the second week, you're like just starting to get used to it. And then
Mm,
the third week, it's like the week you're actually fully present in your vacation. And then the last week, you're starting to get yourself ready to go back. So you
mhm,
do need the 4 weeks, because you
mhm.
need that much
Yeah,
time to even enjoy 1 week.
that's right.
And so I thought I always have sat with that, and I thought that was so funny. And as have also been exploring, okay, well, what does it mean to not just live for the future satisfaction of me, but the day-to-day satisfaction of me, to use your version of well-being. What does that mean of, like, not just constantly working for something else that
Yep,
that you just never know.
that's right.
And
That's
so
right.
I think it is really important for us to explore this, but also the belief that we need to start building within us to
Mhm,
understand that it's okay, that it's
mhm,
okay for us to want to have satisfaction day to day. And it's okay that there is safety that we can still build in having satisfaction right now. And that a lot of people's that retirement and that later is out of safety. But
mhm,
how beliefs that we're building around allowing ourselves to be well,
mm,
to feel good, to enjoy that. And so it does really start with something so internal, and how we shift that, and then the actions will lead by that.
mhm, mhm.
But I wanted to talk about, like, the realities of that
Yep.
transition of shifting those beliefs and
Mhm.
coming out of that. And maybe if you can speak a little bit to that evolution or that
Yeah,
transition for yourself, of
yeah.
you continue to either find the balance or the harmony of, like,
Mhm,
meeting the structure or the measurable outcomes, or this intangible beliefs about
mhm.
what we are supposed to have versus shifting to this place that you're at
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it's been a really long journey. I am a very I have been I changed that. I have been a very work centered person, and um, work was the way that I defined my value.
Mm,
It was the way that I felt like I could do something on behalf of Black people and other people of color. And so my entire existence was wrapped up in work. And so when I got that question, and I keep going back to that question from my therapist, because I sat there like, why are you asking me about that? Like, I have real problems. Like, what are we, why are you asking me about pleasure?
mm,
And left her office. I talk about this in my first book, White Women Cry, and had to Google. Like, I actually went on Google and it's like, what do you do for fun? Like, what is this that she's talking about? What do you do for what is pleasure? You know, and that's actually when I bumped into Adrienne Marie Brown's work,
mm,
pleasure activism. And so it for me, the journey has been it's been slow. I had to experiment my way into it. It's like, well, what am I supposed to? What is she talking about? Like, and so I talk in the book about like, oh, I went to the movies by myself. Like that was one of the first things I did, and it was a big deal. I had never done it before.
mhm,
Um, I was leaving the theater and rushing to get back home. I got to get back home. It's getting dark, you know, and passing a sushi spot and thinking, oh, I would love to go in there, but I got to get home. And remembering my therapist saying, just do something that feels good. Test
mm,
that out. And turning around and going in and sitting and like enjoying something, right? Like these were really tiny things, you know? And then gradually, like, oh, the moon. Oh my goodness, I love sitting with it, looking at it, studying, reading up on it. So then I got some binoculars so I
mm,
could spend more time like really like zeroing in. Um, and then I spent some time in Mexico learning Spanish. I love the language. I've never been fluent, but like doing that, sitting on the beach every day and like feeling the sun on my face, like really being aware of the
mhm,
sun on my face. So these were like growing my capacity for pleasure, for this kind of deep experiences. And then it's not linear. So then I took a job where I like within months was back to the same productivity again, same waking up at 5 a.m., getting on my computer. And um and last year I decided, I talk about this in the second book, We Quit America. I decided to like really take on, what is it that drives me to center work so easily? Like I started these practices and then went right back as if I'd never explored these questions about pleasure.
mm,
And so I left that job, and for about 3 solid months, I slowed down enough, even though I was so scared. I had no income coming in. I slowed down enough to like build new practices that could push. It's like if you have the new practices, they push against the old practices, right? It's
mm,
not on top of old practices. They actually squeeze out the old practices.
mm,
And I just started, I used an app actually to help me do this. And the first thing it had me do was, as soon as I open my eyes, is drink a glass of water. As soon as I open my eyes. And so drink a glass of water even before getting out of bed.
mm,
And then move to the floor to do some stretching.
mhm,
And then, I would, work out, run along some steps, or work out. I have like little weights here. Then eat something nutritious, which is not something I was doing before, just starting with work and working until I was hungry, and then taking the dogs out, and then meditating, and then journaling. And so after a while, even though it was painful at first, after a while, I would look up and it was noon. And all I had been doing was taking care of myself and my body and my mental health, and developing new practices that I can it's almost as if, because I spent 3 months doing them every day and not working, now they are like the first thing that I go to. Does that make sense? It's like, if I wake up and I don't have that water, or I don't take that walk, something feels off, and I have
Mhm.
to I have to, like, do those things to take care of myself. And so it's not perfect. I'm in a sprint right now with a new book out. And so, yes, I'm constantly, it's a constant, like, oh yeah, I've got to go and take a walk today, or I have, like, it's a constant struggle. But at least I'm struggling. At least I'm trying to do these things and to balance them with the work that I do in the world, instead of before, when it wasn't even a thought. I would just work until I passed out in the evening. There was no space for anything else. So
Yeah.
it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and it's not linear at all. Given the environment in which we live, that validates so much work and productivity.
And that relationship, you
Hmm.
said it earlier, our connection to our worth being so attached
Yes.
to that,
Yes.
and how it's unbelievable how a lot of our environments really do continue to validate the
Hmm.
things that hurt us so
Yep.
much. It's,
Yep.
let's reward you for staying late. Let's
Exactly.
reward you for I remember one of the coaches that I used to work with, she would say, can you stop trying to like glamorize not sleeping? Like, I remember people coming in before events or when we're setting up, like, oh, I only got 2 hours of sleep. Oh, I
That's
only got
right.
30 minutes of sleep. And
Right.
everyone's so proud of each other of that. They were
Hmm.
able to function
Yep.
with little love and care for themselves. And I would think back, and that's a lot of what I'm working with clients around. It's, let's think differently about the way we're measuring our success in these things. Instead of the glamorizing the lack of things. I love how you said you built these habits, you built these, and I want to say, I know you've mentioned small steps. I think those are huge steps, because when we are in such a deep place of pain, of hurt, of conditioning, it really takes a lot for us to even say, I want to have sushi, instead of going home and writing that email and start working on that project. Because I think this is what's really different about who we're speaking to. And I'll speak for myself. I loved the work I was doing. I wasn't also, it wasn't that I didn't like it. I
Exactly.
pleasure going and staying late and working on these projects and working on these events, because what I was
Hmm.
doing I loved. And some,
Hmm.
that is the hardest part, is because we love it so much, we feel that it's okay to sacrifice everything. It's okay to sacrifice our well-being, our wealth, sometimes even our income, and our sense of security, because we just love it. We love our community. We care about this so much. And so that's why I think this is so important for us to really understand and think about. You can love it. It's okay for you to love what you do. And also, that does not have to mean you sacrificing
Exactly.
every part of you, your own security, your own well-being. Because again, I'll say what we said at the beginning, if we don't learn how to take care of ourselves differently, if we don't think of differently about how we do it, we're not going to be able to do this for a very long time. And then that not only hurts us, it hurts everyone that we're serving, all the community members that we care so deeply about. um
Yes. Exactly.
Oof, there's just so much here. I
Mm.
did want to name, were you working with the Fabulous app or
No, it was the Greatness app.
the Greatness app? Okay, okay. I've been playing with a like human behavior app. This is
Uh-huh.
And
To create new habits.
yes, and there was
Yes.
and that was one, that was the first thing they said, start with a cup of water in the morning, and I've been doing that.
Uh,
How fun.
Well, let me tell you, when I first started, I did this glass of water, so you have to put it on your nightstand
Yeah.
the night before.
Mhm.
So I got up, I drank my water, and I checked it off on the app, right? And then I try to click on the next habit. And it said to me something like, remember, you've got to, be patient, because I was like, okay, what's the
Next.
next habit? Right. And so I had to the app forces you to stick with the one habit, with the drinking of the
Mhm.
water. I think I had to drink a glass of water for about 7 days before I could go on to the next habit that it was recommending that I build. And
Yeah.
so even in trying to create the new habit, I was trying to check it off. I did it. I drank my glass of water, but it was only one day. It's like, no, that's not how you do it.
No, I love. Okay, this makes me feel so much better because I was having the same thing. I was like, why are they giving me more things to do? I feel more healthy.
Exactly.
So that just
Oh
shows
gosh.
our natural
Exactly.
instinct.
That's right.
And
That's
it
right.
can be good if we use it to help. But I love it,
Yes.
and so this is why I wanted to talk about this. Like you said, putting the water on your nightstand.
Yep.
The What I love and believe so deeply about it's that it's discipline doesn't come from our actions. I think
Mm,
it comes from our environment.
mm,
Who we place ourselves around, the situations that we are putting in, how we set up our space,
mhm,
and
mhm,
organizations, how they are cultivating cultures, right? But before we get into that,
mhm,
I this is why I love you mentioned this, the environment, the community, how important that has been to you. You have been working on such incredible spaces,
mhm, mhm.
cultivating these, what I love you say, restorative spaces and experiences. So I wanted
Mhm.
to hear a little bit more about these for you. I know you hosted retreats and you hosted a
Yes,
slumber party
I
for.
did.
So can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about experience, if you had moments that surprised you from those experiences?
Yeah. Oh, this has been the best part of, I talked earlier about like documenting this suffering and then look at what has happened on the other side of it. And the best part has been these spaces with Black women and other women of color. Earlier this year, I just thought, okay, now that the book is out in the world and people are resonating, I just wanted to know like what would support us, right? What would support us in being together and healing together and experiencing joy and pleasure together. And so that's where the idea of a retreat came about. So 7 women joined me here in my home earlier this year, April, for a retreat. Amazing time together. Then I hosted a support group. So this was a more intense offering. I brought in a somatic practitioner.
Mm,
I brought in a licensed clinical social worker who has deep roots in somatic work, anti racist work. And we spent 3 months with a group of 12 Black women and women of color. This was specifically in philanthropy. And
mm,
we met every other week. And this was a more intense offering. So people who were either like currently like in the middle of some very traumatic experiences or
mm,
had recently experienced something traumatic at work and just building their muscle around the body, around soma, how
mm,
to understand what the body is trying to tell you,
mhm,
um, how to practice with various somatic practices. And so I experimented with that. Also, a very beautiful space. And then this year, when I was celebrating the 1 year anniversary of the book, I was thinking, how do I want to celebrate? And again, this was not a question I would have asked before, right? Like there was no celebration. You do something and you keep going. And I thought, okay, I want to celebrate this 1 year. I could have like a big like event, rent out a place, which is what I did for the launch, but I just wanted something more intimate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought I would invite like women who are in my, social network, either like online or in person, to come to a slumber party. Like that is what I could remember as being so deeply like pleasing from my childhood. And how many people came? About 30 women came, and it was unbelievable, right? So the thing that surprised me was that I thought it would be hard for people to get into their playful selves, their slumber party youthful selves, and it was not. It was
Mm.
not. These were professional women who built careers. And I thought, oh man, this is going to be a struggle. And it absolutely was not. I just think that when we were young, we played. We played. And that instinct is still there. We just need the spaces that allow for that play to reemerge.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, we've been working, and I remember asking the group, why did we stop playing? And they said, well, work got in the way, right? But as soon as we said, okay, let's go play double dutch, oh my goodness, it was on, right? It was on. As soon as we said, okay, now we're gonna play Miss Mary Mac, then it was on, like Miss Mary Mac, 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 all dressed in black, black, black. And then Jax, we played Jax. We did Simone Says instead of Simon Says. Uh, we played telestrations. We danced to the wobble. I mean, it was glorious. And so that was the surprise. I thought it would be hard. It wasn't hard. It
Mm-mm.
wasn't hard. It's just the space was created,
Yeah.
and folks just moved right into it. We are ready to play. We are
Yeah.
ready. We want to play. We are ready to play. We need spaces to play.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
that is so, and
beautiful.
it is so true. It is, that has been something I've been so grateful and in love with, is the more I talk to women, the more I talk to people, we are ready. And people are saying, I want softness. I want feminine
Yes.
energy. I'm looking for that. Like, I get it. I've been working so hard for so long.
Mhm,
This is something I am desiring. And
mhm.
it's that we've, maybe to what I hear you saying too, like we've thought that people wouldn't want it or that it would be
Mhm.
difficult. But the minute we just open that little
Yep,
window, it's
yep.
just, it just sees so much magic. And I
Yes.
believe like this is the time right now. We have a
Mhm.
comment. This makes my soul so happy.
Oh,
Thank you, Veronica. Absolutely. Like, this is just something that is so needed. I'm so grateful that these women were able to experience this and that sparked this idea that hopefully we get more slumber
more
parties.
slumber parties. You know what? You know what was so beautiful? A woman brought to the slumber party a bag of games, and
Hmm.
she donated them to me. She said, here is a bag of Jacks and Twister and all kinds of things. And you are going to do more of these. I hadn't thought about that at all. And she gifted them. And it was such a meaningful gift to say, with this little investment in Black women, women of color, having spaces to play.
Yes, I love that. And that was actually going to be one of my next questions of the investment piece. Like, I
Mm,
saw that if a foundation for
mm,
racial ability sponsored your slumber party, and
mhm.
as entrepreneurs, as consultants, as women of color that want to create these spaces, but I very much believe we shouldn't have to do it all on our own.
Mhm.
How did you work through partnering with
Yeah.
an organization in a place of integrity that
Mhm.
really, how did you feel like, yeah, this is the right type of partnership I want to
Yeah.
create? we're doing here.
Yeah. So if a foundation for radical possibility used to be the Consumer Health Foundation, I led that foundation for about 10 years. And they have a portfolio called Healing Justice.
Mm-hmm.
And so, first of all, an organization that just believes that this is important work. So they're a racial justice foundation, and they believe that healing justice is. It's not like you do racial justice over here and then healing justice is somewhere else, but that they go together. You can't do the racial justice work to the point of burnout, to the point of complete exhaustion, and not have spaces to heal and recover, right? And so they believe that. And so when I approached them about potential sponsorship, I knew that they had um, this belief that racial justice work and healing justice work go together. Um, I don't, so I have approached other funders about creating more spaces like these. Another funder who has been supportive is Open Horizon. They actually have invested in the film that I'm working on. It's a film adaptation of the book White Women Cry, again with the purpose, and it's such a soft film. If you've seen some of the imagery that I've put out, it's about talking about hard topics of racism, Black women at work, but in a way that allows us some softness. And so that foundation believes in that, and so supported that work. And so I think it's finding, they're not that many, but
Mm-hmm.
finding the organizations who have the belief. Right now, I'm just not interested in convincing anyone. I did that for so long, and I feel like it takes me back to unhealthy places to
Mm-hmm.
be trying to convince folks of what I know and what Black women know, women of color know to be true and know what's needed. And so I'll make an ask to the right organization. If they support, they support. If they don't, we try other ways
Mm-hmm.
to be together. I also support a coalition called Black Women for Liberated Workplaces. We meet once a month, the first Friday of every month. We have no money to do that, to be together. Um, but we be together. We get together and we heal together and dream together. We've been doing some sessions on dreaming, on using science fiction to dream, on art to dream. And there's no money that is supporting that, but it's important for us to be together. And so I'm just in a place right now where I just want to experiment. I just want to try some things. I want to be with people, be in community, and see what see what comes from that. You know what I mean? Like no more like trying to convince people of what we know to be true for ourselves.
Yeah. Oof. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I love this. I love, and you have found people that feel aligned in that way.
Mhm.
Absolutely. That is the minimum you deserve. Oh, I know we're getting to time, but I
Yes.
really wanted to speak to one last thing in terms of organization
Mm.
culture and folks that are really, I shared with you, we have folks here that have watched these conversations that are either thinking about how to address these topics within their organizations or maybe cultivating this type of new way of being for themselves. And so I would love to hear maybe from you a what you would want to call organizations in to think about in terms of cultivating these types of experiences for
Mm.
their Black women and women of color within their organizations. And then another question. So let
Yeah.
me.
Really quickly, I think start small. That's the first thing I would say. In White Women Cry, there's an essay called Tree of Life. And it's about an experiment that we tried inside of the foundation I used to lead. And that was to open each, I think these were board meetings and board retreats, board and staff retreats with storytelling.
Mm,
And all that is moving us away from constantly placing what we believe is the work
mhm,
first and accept or embrace that the work also includes what is between us.
mm,
And the way that you cultivate what is between us, one way, is to tell stories. And
mm,
so we use the tool called Tree of Life. It's where you talk about your family, what your mother did for a living, what your father did for a living, how or how household duties were shared or not, in your family, maybe what your grandfather did for a living, your grandparents, um, kind of what parts of history inform your story, the Great Migration, people leaving kind of war torn places, and just starting to tell these stories, it changed everything for us, right?
mm,
Because we had always started with the what we considered the work. And
mhm,
so when it got tough, when we had to come up against a tough decision, because we knew each other in a different way, because we had told stories, I know where you are coming from. I know that your father flew you out of Vietnam, right, to escape uh, persecution. I know that about you. And so, if we have built these kinds of relationships together, when it's time to face tough things together, we have something holding us together. So that's where I would start. It's really basic, like telling stories about our lives. Um, and then from there are all kinds of ways to be together, all kinds of books and things like that. But that's what I would offer.
I
Get,
love that.
getting to know each other.
Yeah, thank you. The humanity I
Yes,
hear is
that's
the
right.
knowing ourselves past this role, knowing ourselves past this idea, and how important that is.
Mhm.
I want to ask you really quick too, for women and people that are starting to their career and wanting to implement this new way of being. Do you have any advice that you would give to these women that want to exist in this way and looking towards that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be the same advice that my therapist offered me at a time when I was like, what are you talking about? And why are you talking to me about this? Which is what feels good to you.
Mm,
It's a simple question, but it is not. It's not a simple answer if you are not um, existing in this way. And
mhm,
so, just every day, asking yourself what feels good to me, and try to answer that question, like live into that question, because I believe now that I'm on this other side, that a person who is deeply satisfied,
mhm,
deeply pleasing themselves. Like you can't break the soul of someone who is deeply pleased. And I think that's what I was missing. My soul was broken by all these experiences with, especially with white women, because I didn't have a center of satisfaction and pleasure. It was all,
mhm,
it was all pain and struggle. And
mhm,
so once I made that shift, I just keep thinking of Beyonce. It's like, you can't break my soul. You can't. You can't. I have a wellspring that comes from someplace else that you can't touch. And so cultivating that, developing that from deep within, it's not a clear answer. It's not a direct answer, but I believe the answers come from there.
So beautiful. So beautiful. We just all need to wake up with
Yes.
please do not make my it's on my morning playlist. But
Yes.
I love what you're saying of we need to cultivate that first in order to feel like we're not like this idea of just being resilient out of
Mhm.
existing. It comes
Exactly.
with building that foundation.
That's right.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so our final question, thank you for staying an
Of
extra
course.
minute, is living a life con fuerza. It's about reclaiming our inner power to live in alignment with our values. How are you
Mhm.
choosing to live a life con fuerza? Or what does living a life con fuerza, which is with strength in Spanish, mean to you?
Yeah. Yeah. I've said it before, but I will say it again that American culture, I think, uses fear to help
Mm,
you decide how to live, what to do, right? So, do you want to eat? Well, if you want to eat, you better keep that job, right? When you get old, you don't want to be destitute. So you better save that money, save all your money, put it in the stock market.
mhm,
Um, you better work your whole life, right? Or else something bad is going to happen to you, right? So it's a deeply fear-based way of living. And that's how I lived for a very long time. And I think living a life con fuerza is living a countercultural life. It
mhm,
is a life based on what is deeply satisfying, what is pleasurable, a life on your own terms. You and your communities get to decide what is a good life. The woman in the book that I just published, We Quit America, who lives in Chicago, who has a bountiful garden in her backyard, right? Like, I don't need, there's no grocery store in my neighborhood, but I'm going to grow my own food. It's countercultural. And
mhm.
so that to me, she is living a life con fuerza. And
Yeah,
so that's what I would offer. That's what it means to me. And I love that you've introduced me to this phrase that I can now like use in my daily meditations.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Oh, I am so grateful. There's so much that I want to continue talking
Yes.
about. But this is just the beginning. I have deep belief in that. Thank you for everything you are, for everything you've shared, for willing to share your story and opening up these spaces, opening up this whole not only this new world for you, but for so many of us that were felt so seen by your work and your
Oh,
words
thank
and
you.
how we continue to understand and now know that there are more of us that want
Mhm.
of being that want to exist in this way. So, amigas, amiguis, friends, all that are here and listening, just know that there is a community now of a different way of existing. And
Mm.
so, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here.
Thank
Any
you.
final words, any other things that we can support you in your work? I know we have the documentary, the new book.
Yes, I know. Just, I'll share whitewomencry.com is where you can get my first book on my experiences of racism at work and this pleasure journey that I've been on. My new book is at wequitamerica.com, which is about the life that I am building outside of the United States and stories of many people, both in the US and outside of the United States, who are building this countercultural life that I
Mm.
mentioned. And if you go to whitewomencry.com, click on film, you can learn more about the film and donate to our crowdfunding campaign. Thank you for allowing me to say that.
Of course, of course. And thank you all. For those of you who don't know about our leadership and well-being resource library, please, please, please go to this library. We have an episode page for each of our conversations here. So all of these conversations, the White Women Cry website, as well as We Quit America website is on here. So come and learn about these and buy your book, support them, donate, all of it. Just our power also in this way we exist comes from who we give our money to, who we choose to support. All those little decisions are huge, especially for small business owners like us. So please, please, please continue to support. Thank you so much. I hope everyone a beautiful day. And it was so wonderful to see you and spend this time
Thank
together.
you.
I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Take care.